back in the Matthew's Friends Keto Kitchen, and today we have with us one of Matthew's friends, dietitian Sue Wood.
Hello.
Hello Sue, again. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be covering what's potentially a problem, constipation.
Yes.
Right.
So constipation is something that we always talk about in relation to ketogenic therapy. And it's not necessarily that everybody experiences a problem, but it is a common issue. So some people get away without it and some people have really, really serious problems. And that's why before we start, we always check if people have a history of constipation, whether it's a child or an adult. Because if you've already got you've already got constant problems with it, we need to sort that out before the treatment started.
Yes.
But let's just talk about the sorts of things that people might like to try in terms of focusing on improving their problems if they do feel that things are changing.
Yeah.
So we've brought up a few ideas here, and the thing with constipation is not just a simple put the fibre in and the output will be there, or put the fluid in and the output will be there.
Oh, right.
The bowel is such a complicated organ with all sorts of complex links to psychological elements, physical elements, sort of nervous elements, hormonal elements.
Oh, of course.
So there's so many things really relating to the gut. So what we need to think about to start with certainly is things like enough fluid. So drinking plenty. And, for children, small children, getting them, if possible, to drink lots of water or very, very dilute sugar-free squash, that sort of thing. Yeah. Get the fluids in. If it's an adult who's drinking teas and coffees, maybe getting them to have some herbal teas or some glasses of water between the teas and coffees, so they're really getting the fluids in. So fluid is an important basic. On from the fluid, it's about really getting a certain amount of fibre or enough fibre as much as possible within often a carbohydrate restricted diet, which just makes things just a little bit difficult because of course it's carbohydrate containing foods that we derive our fibre from.
Yeah.
So when you start out on ketogenic diet, often that's quite a shock to the bowel and shock to the gut because it's used to having a lot more fibre coming through. And when you switch onto a very low carbohydrate diet, then the bugs, the microbiome, all the bugs that live in our bowel have a bit of a shock. And that's possibly the reason why you get this change in the gut function.
Oh, right.
One of the reasons. So therefore, we need to look at ways of trying to get some fibre into our meals. So we've got a few vegetables and things here, haven't we?
We have, yes.
And so what we've got is vegetables here that will provide a bit of fibre, and also you get fairly generous amounts as well for your carbohydrate allowance.
Yes, kale and spinach is quite, on the lower end, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes.
So what it means is if you're really needing to boost up the fibre intake in the diet because maybe constipation is a little bit of an issue, then using more of these elements, then it will just increase the fibre intake in your diet. Also things like bean sprouts, using those in stir fries, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Kale and dark green leafy vegetables and salads, that sort of thing. We've also got rhubarb there as well.
That's one of the best fruits, I would imagine, isn't it?
Yes, and I think, you make some lovely recipes with rhubarb, and it just needs to be sweetened appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
but yes, it can be really, really valuable because you do get quite a lot for a carbohydrate allowance. Yeah. Then what else have we got? We've got ketogenic baking, of course, and again, you've got a whole range of lovely recipes there. Yeah. Using elements such as flaxseed to make
wonderful for bread.
Breads,
yeah, bread and muffins.
Yes, so there's all sorts of things that they can be put into, or the odd biscuit, or they can be stirred into porridge, can't they? The flax seeds.
Absolutely, yes.
So that's a really good thing to use, and it really is helpful for the bowel. Flax seeds can be a really, really brilliant thing to use, but you've got to get the fluids in when you're adding more flaxseed in.
Because it absorbs the fluid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, you may, if you just pile in the flax seeds and don't increase fluid intake, you may actually worsen the issue. There's a risk. So flax seeds are brilliant, but get the fluids in as well. And then we've got the psyllium husk, which
yes,
again,
where have
you used that mainly?
Well, sort of replaces the gluten. We were finding that baked goods, just made with flax, for instance, tended to crumble.
Yeah.
And by adding some psyllium husk, it binds it and
so it's
acts
a bit
like
structure.
gluten would do. Yeah.
That's really, really
But
good.
of course, you've got the added bonus that it is a fibre.
Yes.
And
yes.
it's free within the diet.
No,
so,
that's right. So again, it's not absorbed. We can't utilise it. We haven't
No.
got the mechanisms to actually utilise it.
No.
So what happens to things like these fibres from the seeds and these psyllium husks is that they are actually then broken down, or rather used by the gut bacteria, and that keeps them well and healthy, and also then helps to helps to move things on down, holds a bit of fluid in the bowel, helps to move the waste down and out of the body. So psyllium husk is a brilliant thing. And then we've also got a little bit of oat bran here as well, which we can use that in maybe our porridges
biscuits.
and things.
I've got recipes using oat bran. In fact, next week you'll see a recipe for that. And of course, with the flax, that you can make a little porridge, as you say.
Yes, no, it can
obviously
be good.
depending on what carb you can have, but it's very, very good.
Yeah,
very
but we
good.
often use a bit of oats anyway, don't we, in our porridge? So I suppose if we use the oat bran, we just got a little bit more of the fibre element as well as for our carbohydrates. So there's lots of foodie ways that we can really try and enhance things, enhance fibre, and again using these basic ingredients. Now, if constipation is really a problem, and I think with children we have to say that we don't let it become a problem. We'd rather make sure things work and keep things moving, and then maybe pull back on elements further on down the line if we need to. So this is where readily we would say to a GP, maybe when we're actually asking for the prescribed elements, we might say, well, actually maybe it'd be worth having something like paediatric Movicol, or maybe for an adult Movicol available, so that they could actually start maybe using that if they think there's any issue at all. That can always be just pulled back again.
So is something like that just taken as a medicine, or is it incorporated in the food?
No, that is actually a medicinal product. You can buy it over the counter, or you can have it prescribed.
Right.
And so that can be, you place it into a glass of water. You have to put a set amount of water in, stir it up, and drink it, and that will help to hold water in the bowel and again carry away the waste products. So it acts as a way of actually just passing things through. So that can be quite effective. Another element that can be used maybe in addition to food is the fructooligosaccharides, which is actually just inulin, which is a sort of thing that we find in vegetables actually.
Oh, right, yes.
Now, those are vegetables such as asparagus and leeks and onions and cabbages provide a special type of fibre that really does, the bugs in our bowels really like them. They really like that fibre. Yeah. And so if we need to, we can add just a little bit extra to our diet, maybe add it into porridges, add it into things, sprinkle it onto foods. It's not used as carbohydrate by ourselves, but it's used as a food for the bugs. So you have to have just a tiny amount to start with, and then maybe build it up. Otherwise you can get quite significant problems with wind and bloating. If you go for too much at once, you don't want to do that, no. So you can be wind assisted if you have a little bit too much of that. So, but you can get used to having a little bit added to your diet. So that can be quite useful. But using things like asparagus and leeks and cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower in our daily diet may just help to boost the amounts of those fibres that are really particularly helpful for the gut bacteria. Then, now they're called prebiotics. That gets a bit confusing.
Pre
means that they are helpful to the existing gut flora or the existing gut bacteria. Whereas probiotics, which we've got an example here of a probiotic, that is a product that actually contains bacterial cultures that are supposed to be, or we consider to be, more healthful for the bowel. And so they are quite separate, but often work together. And again, it's not necessarily that everybody should be taking probiotics and extra prebiotics, but it's another option to be considered and discussed with your medical team and clinical team if you're considering problems with the bowel, and gut, and trying to really try and juggle things around and make things better. So there's a whole different array of different possibilities relating to constipation.
Yes.
It's not straightforward, and it's very individual.
Yeah, so it's a matter of finding what suits
It's
each
talking
individual
to your dietitian or your doctor about the issues and trying to find the best way forward. And things may change as you go through your ketogenic therapy. And many individuals who talk, there are many that don't have a problem with constipation, but those that do have a problem with constipation really need to get it sorted out.
It's not good, is it?
No, it isn't good. It's not good for seizure management.
No.
It's not good for general health and well-being. So it does need to be sorted.
Yeah.
But there are lots of ways to sort it.
Well, that was interesting. I've learned something, as usual. As we mentioned earlier, there's recipes coming up using these foodstuffs here. So I hope you go on to the Matthew's Friends Keto Kitchen channel and look them up, and they may help solve a problem if you have it. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Thanks.